Welcome to Filtered Society, where inequality meets social media. If you believe stories like this deserve to be heard, please subscribe. Connection. Some crave it, some fear it, some have mastered it. Most are still searching for it. You might think of social media as an app, lines of code, blinking servers, algorithms quietly measuring our behavior. A modern convenience that helps us share photos, opinions, and fragments of our lives. But the truth runs deeper. The story of social media is the story of us, of how, from the moment we began speaking, human beings have sought to be seen, remembered, and understood. Long before screens, likes, or followers, we built entire civilizations around a single question: who's listening? Those ancient impulses, to signal, to belong, to be witnessed, didn't begin online. They were born in the flicker of firelight, where stories were the original social graph and memory was the first feed. Around the fire, the storyteller held power. Their words shaped reputation, morality, and myth. The hunter who brought back the biggest catch earned status, not just through strength, but through the tale retold by others. Stories were currency, traded for belonging. The campfire was humanity's first platform, and attention was the earliest form of influence. Each tale carried status and lesson, a primitive post that could spread across generations. Gossip wasn't meaningless chatter, it was social glue. Evolutionary psychologists suggest gossip evolved as a survival mechanism, a way to enforce norms, track trust, and detect threats. To know what others were saying was to stay safe. In small tribes, reputation determined whether you ate with the group or wandered alone. Our ancestors didn't have notifications, but they were just as alert to whispers of their name. Being forgotten was extinction. When humans began scratching marks on clay and carving symbols into stone, we performed the first upload. Writing allowed ideas to travel farther than the body, survive longer than the breath. What began as inventory lists and trade records became poetry, scripture, law, the written ancestors of status updates. Every symbol declared, I was here. I mattered enough to be remembered. Centuries passed, the ink deepened. Empires rose and fell on scrolls and parchment. Then, in the 15th century, one invention rewired humanity's network: the printing press. For the first time, communication could scale. Ideas that once depended on messengers or memory could now reach thousands. Pamphlets became viral threads. Books became long-form posts. Martin Luther's 95 Theses were the first content to go viral, copied and spread through Europe within weeks. Revolutions, religions, and reputations were built not by armies, but by words on a page. Yet behind every technological leap was psychology, the same two forces that still drive us online today: the need for recognition and the fear of being forgotten. The printing press democratized visibility. Suddenly, ordinary people could author their own ideas, speak beyond their social class, leave a mark. The concept of authorship itself, the notion that your name might live beyond you, was intoxicating. We began to measure worth not by lineage, but by reach. As the centuries turned, new inventions continued this pattern. The telegraph collapsed distance, the telephone collapsed time. The radio turned anonymous signals into voices that entered our homes and spoke directly to us. For the first time, mass communication carried intimacy. It felt personal, even when it wasn't. Every broadcast reminded listeners that they were part of something larger: a nation, a movement, an audience. We had entered the age of signals, where presence could be transmitted without proximity. Then came television, the moving image, the human face magnified into living rooms worldwide. With it arrived a new psychology: parasocial interaction. Viewers began forming emotional bonds with people they'd never met. A smiling anchor became a friend. A sitcom family felt like neighbors. This illusion of closeness, one-sided but deeply felt, was the prototype for the relationships we now have with influencers and creators. We didn't know it then, but the seeds of modern social media had already sprouted in black and white. Each medium, telegraph, radio, television, did something extraordinary. It made communication faster, broader, easier. But each also carried the same temptation: to not merely communicate, but to perform, to manage how we are seen. Sociologists call this the presentation of self. We curate, edit, and adjust our image to protect the fragile currency of social approval. In small communities, that meant reputation among neighbors. On television, it meant likability ratings. Online, it became likes and followers. The context changed, the craving did not. Even in these early eras, attention was the invisible economy. What people watched, repeated, or quoted held value. Politicians learned to stage charisma. Companies learned to package desire. The human mind, built to navigate small groups, now found itself speaking to millions. We had entered a feedback loop. The more we were seen, the more we wanted to be. By the 20th century, information was abundant, but attention remained scarce. Psychologists began warning that human focus was a limited resource. Every new medium, newspaper, radio, cinema, television, competed for it. That competition would later evolve into what we now call the attention economy, but the foundation was already laid. Wherever human eyes gathered, power followed. Yet amidst these vast networks, the individual still longed for connection that felt personal. Letters carried scent and emotion. Phone calls carried tone. When radio shows took listener requests, it felt interactive, participatory, a foreshadowing of likes and comments. We have always wanted our messages to matter, to be received, to be answered. As communication spread outward, so did loneliness. The paradox of progress emerged. The more ways we had to speak, the less often we felt heard. Mass media united audiences, but silenced individuals. Millions watched the same broadcast, yet few could respond. The internet would later reverse that balance, but before it arrived, humans lived for decades in a one-way mirror, seen but unseen, spectators without agency. Still, the psychology remained ancient. Connection conferred safety. To be ignored felt dangerous. That's why even today, an unanswered text can feel like rejection. A pause in the digital conversation can stir anxiety. The nervous system doesn't know the difference between being left out of a campfire story and being left on red. It registers exclusion the same way. This is the lineage social media inherited. The campfire, the scroll, the printing press, the broadcast tower. Each was a mirror humanity built to reflect itself, and each, in time, began to distort the reflection. With every new way to communicate came new expectations for how to appear, to write beautifully, to sound confident, to look photogenic under the flicker of cathode light. Performance slowly fused with identity until authenticity itself became another performance. So when the first digital networks emerged, when the internet began to hum in quiet rooms in the 1980s and 90s, it wasn't a new instinct being born. It was an old instinct finding new bandwidth. The need to be witnessed simply upgraded its medium. From the flicker of the fire to the flicker of the screen, from the circle of tribe to the web of billions, the same psychological DNA traveled forward intact. We have always been broadcasting. We have always been scrolling. We have always been searching for our reflection in the eyes of others. The platforms changed. The pulse did not. Attention, recognition, belonging. These were never inventions of technology. They were survival tools of the species. And as the next chapter of communication began to unfold, the digital one, it carried the entire weight of that history with it. The story of social media, then, does not begin with code or commerce. It begins with a whisper in the dark, a story shared to fill silence, a desire to be known by another mind. Every like, share, or comment is a faint echo of that first call across the fire. The difference now is scale. The whisper has become a roar. The internet began as a whisper, a slow dial tone hum that connected one lonely computer to another through the patience of static and time. In the 1980s and early 1990s, bulletin board systems, news groups, and message forums flickered to life in dimly lit basements and university labs. They were messy, text-heavy, and gloriously human. There were no profiles, no filters, no influencers, only usernames, chosen identities that let people start over, unburdened by their offline reputations. In those digital rooms, the shy spoke loudly, and the powerful could be ignored. For the first time, hierarchy flattened. People didn't meet, they collided. Then came the sound that would define a decade, the modem handshake, the dial-up song of a new world coming online. You've got mail. 3 words that triggered the first modern dopamine rush. Psychologists would later call it variable reward reinforcement, the pleasure of uncertain reward. Every ping was a maybe an invitation, maybe attention, maybe love. Information had become emotional. America Online, Netscape, and early chat rooms turned the web into a digital neighborhood. Communities formed around hobbies, fears, and fantasies. Message boards became gathering places for people who had never met anyone like themselves before. For a few brief years, the internet felt utopian, anonymous but kind, chaotic but free. It was a frontier built on curiosity more than commerce. But human psychology never stays neutral for long. Once connection became possible, the next desire was status. MySpace arrived and handed the average person a stage. A personal profile wasn't just information, it was self-expression. Your favorite song autoplayed when someone visited your page. Your background wallpaper broadcast your taste. Your top 8 friends announced your loyalties. It was friendship made visible, hierarchy made public. The platform didn't invent comparison, it industrialized it. Then, in 2004, a clean blue website launched from a Harvard dorm room. It promised simplicity, order, and authenticity. Real names, real faces, real networks. What it truly delivered was quantified belonging. Friend counts became social proof. Photos turned into performance. What began as a digital student directory quietly rewired the psychology of identity. For the first time, validation had a button. Soon, the newsfeed appeared. It seemed harmless, a running list of updates from people you knew. But in that moment, the internet changed forever. Instead of seeking information, information now sought you. The feed was an endless slot machine. Pull to refresh, scroll for reward, repeat. Every new post offered the possibility of novelty. The brain, wired to seek surprise, learned the ritual instantly. The first addiction of the algorithmic age was born, not to drugs or danger, but to what might come next. Facebook grew, then fractured into offspring. Instagram captured beauty. Twitter condensed thought. YouTube televised the self. Each platform spoke to a different part of the human psyche. Instagram appealed to the desire to be admired. Twitter rewarded the desire to be right. YouTube fed the desire to be seen. The design was deliberate, but the outcome was ancient. Underneath every platform beat the same pulse that once animated the storyteller by the fire. Look at me, hear me, remember me. Instagram, with its soft filters and curated grids, became a museum of aspiration. Ordinary life was cropped, polished, and displayed as evidence of happiness. Filters didn't just soften skin, they softened truth. What was once private, meals, milestones, grief, became shareable. Life turned performative, and authenticity became a brand. We learned to live for the highlight reel. The psychology was subtle but corrosive. When every image is edited, reality starts to feel inferior. Twitter, later X, built a different economy, one of outrage and wit. It rewarded sharpness over nuance, speed over reflection. The shorter the post, the stronger the emotion had to be to travel. The algorithm learned that anger spread faster than accuracy, and we learned to speak in extremes to be heard. A new currency emerged: engagement. It wasn't enough to be right, you had to be reactive. The louder the tone, the greater the reach. Outrage became optimized. Then came TikTok, the platform that turned attention into reflex. Music, motion, and emotion looped endlessly in microbursts. The barrier between creator and consumer dissolved. Everyone could participate, and everyone could vanish just as quickly. It was pure variable reinforcement, each swipe a question. Will this one make me feel something? The feed learned faster than any human editor ever could, shaping itself to each heartbeat of curiosity and boredom. By now, the business model was clear. If you weren't paying for the product, you were the product. Data became the new gold rush. Your clicks, pauses, and hesitations mined for profit. Every like, every linger, every scroll trained an invisible system that learned what to show you next. Behavior became both input and output. You thought you were using the app. The app was using you to teach itself how to keep you there longer. Psychologically, it was perfect. The human brain evolved in scarcity. These platforms created abundance. Endless content meant endless comparison. You could always find someone prettier, richer, smarter, or more successful, and the algorithm made sure you did. Social comparison, the ancient drive to measure ourselves against others, went from a local habit to a global reflex. Where a village once offered 100 peers, the internet offered millions. The result was predictable. Envy turned ambient, self-esteem turned external, and self-worth began to depend on metrics we couldn't control. The illusion of connection deepened the craving for it. Likes felt like approval, but they faded fast. So we posted again, and again. Each new share brought a temporary high and an inevitable low. The cycle of attention became the new rhythm of existence. For a generation raised on feeds, silence felt uncomfortable, stillness felt like failure. The reward loop that once kept gamblers at slot machines now kept humanity online. Behind the screens, new hierarchies formed. Influence became measurable. Follower counts replaced titles. Engagement rates replaced resumes. The hierarchy was democratic in theory, but ruthless in practice. Anyone could go viral, but no one could stay viral for long. Popularity became unstable currency, valuable only until the next update pushed you from the feed. Fame, once scarce and slow, became abundant and fleeting. The irony is that the internet didn't start this behavior, it revealed it. Every evolutionary impulse, from tribalism to curiosity, from validation to mimicry, found a digital stage. Social media didn't create human psychology, it scaled it. And scale changes everything. What once played out among small groups of people now unfolded before the entire world, in real time, forever archived. The consequences of embarrassment, conflict, or mistake multiplied. One impulsive post could erase a career. One viral video could redefine a person. The cost of visibility rose even as the barrier to entry vanished. We entered a paradox, the world's largest stage with no backstage. Everyone performing, everyone watching, everyone exhausted. People began longing for privacy again, not secrecy, but peace. Digital detox became the modern Sabbath, an attempt to reclaim attention from devices built to harvest it. But like any dependency, escape required more than intention. It required design. The apps were engineered to be frictionless. Logging off was swimming upstream against billions of dollars of behavioral science. Yet amid the noise, there were flashes of light. The same mechanisms that spread misinformation also spread solidarity. Strangers raised money for strangers. Movements that would have died in silence found global witnesses. Humor, art, and empathy flourished in memes and short videos. The same architecture that exploited attention could also distribute meaning faster than any system in history. The mirror could distort, but it could also illuminate. By the late 2010s, one truth was unavoidable. Social media was no longer a tool we used. It was an environment we lived in. Like water to a fish, it surrounded us invisibly, shaping perception and behavior without notice. We measured experiences by their shareability. We documented first, felt second. The instinct to record replaced the instinct to remember. The world had become a stage, and the stage never closed. Every generation believes it is living through something unprecedented, but the rise of the feed was more than another communication revolution. It was a psychological one. The architecture of attention had been rebuilt from the ground up. We were no longer passive consumers of media. We were both the subject and the story. We were no longer audiences. We were participants. And just like that, the whisper of connection that began in the age of dial-up had grown into a global chorus. Millions of voices talking at once, all hoping to be heard, all listening for an echo that feels like home. The feed didn't just change how we communicate, it changed what we expect from being human. A new hierarchy had emerged, not of kings or priests, but of followers. Influence was no longer inherited or bestowed, it was algorithmically assigned. Trust became a number, intimacy became a performance, and access became currency. The gatekeepers of old, publishers, studios, critics, were replaced by metrics that lived and died by the second. Fame was democratized, but also industrialized. Anyone could be seen, but no one could stay seen for long. The same system that built stars also burned them out. At first, this felt like liberation. Ordinary people could speak to the world, unfiltered, unapproved. The barriers that once silenced voices, the walls of class, geography, or race, were suddenly porous. Movements that began as whispers became roars, hashtags became flags, strangers became allies. For the first time in history, attention was truly crowdsourced. And yet, with that newfound power came a new form of vulnerability. When validation depends on visibility, invisibility feels like death. Every post became a performance. Every caption a small negotiation between authenticity and strategy. We learned to sound real, to appear unfiltered, to curate imperfection just enough to make it marketable. Vulnerability became its own aesthetic, empathy its own brand. To be relatable became a business model. It was sincerity, optimized. The deeper truth was psychological. When your sense of identity is externalized, measured by reactions, quantified by strangers, the self becomes unstable. we began to experience what psychologists call contingent self-worth, the feeling that who you are only matters if someone else agrees. The old anxieties of adolescence, popularity, comparison, belonging, followed us into adulthood, multiplied by the size of our audience. The digital crowd never slept, and neither did our need to please it. Burnout arrived quietly, disguised as productivity. The exhaustion of being perpetually on, the anxiety of slipping from the feed. The fear that a life not posted is a life not lived. We became managers of our own micro-celebrity. And like all managers, we began to measure success in metrics, views, shares, engagement, virality. Even silence became data. A post that didn't perform felt like failure. The irony was profound. A technology built to connect us had begun to isolate us in plain sight. Surrounded by interaction, we felt alone. We called it social media, but much of it was performance media. Connection mediated by performance. Intimacy filtered through a screen. What looked like abundance was often emptiness dressed in relevance. The timeline was crowded, but the conversations were thin. And yet, within the same circuitry that amplified vanity, compassion also found its home. Movements like #MeToo, Black Lives Matter, and climate activism spread through the same algorithms that once sold cosmetics and outrage. Digital empathy, fleeting but fierce, became a force governments and corporations couldn't ignore. The same tools that manipulated attention could mobilize it. The mirror, for all its distortions, still reflected truth when aimed in the right direction. But power never arrives without risk. Disinformation flourished in the same soil as solidarity. Algorithms, tuned to engagement, didn't care whether a post was true, only whether it was clicked. Outrage paid better than nuance. Simplicity outperformed accuracy. The emotional brain, ancient, tribal, reactive, became the new battlefield. In the attention economy, the product isn't information, it's agitation. The result was fragmentation. The global village became 1,000 echo chambers, each convinced it was the whole world. We didn't stop seeking truth, we just outsourced it to systems that profited from confusion. The promise of democratized information quietly turned into an empire of polarization. Psychologists studying this new landscape began to notice something eerie. Digital spaces were reactivating the oldest human instincts, tribalism. The brain evolved to sort us from them as a survival mechanism. Now, every comment section, every feed, every thread trained us to do it again, thousands of times a day. Like and share became the moral signals of belonging. Outrage became the badge of loyalty. We weren't just sharing opinions anymore, we were defending identities. The consequences reached beyond politics. Online, the human nervous system lives in a state of low-level threat. The possibility of misinterpretation, cancellation, ridicule, or exile. When a comment section turns hostile, the body reacts as if to danger. Cortisol spikes, heart rate rises. The brain reads digital shame as social death. What once meant losing your tribe around the fire now means losing your followers on the screen. The setting changed, the biology didn't. And this is why design matters. Buttons, colors, notifications, infinite scroll, all the small decisions hidden in pixels, shape emotion as surely as architecture shapes movement. A red notification isn't an accident. It's a psychological trigger. Autoplay, endless scroll, people you may know. These aren't conveniences, they're conditioning loops. The system doesn't need to force us to stay. It just needs to make leaving feel incomplete. The invisible curriculum of a platform teaches us what to value. Post often, engage quickly, avoid silence. Each of us becomes both teacher and student, training the algorithm as it trains us back. Over time, the design of the system becomes the design of our thoughts. We start composing experiences as if we're narrating them to an audience. We begin to anticipate how something will look before we've even lived it. Reality becomes pre-edited, but the human mind adapts. Some people began to step away, not rejecting technology, but renegotiating it. They turned off notifications, set boundaries, rediscovered boredom. They built smaller circles where conversations felt human again. Others retreated into private communities, Discord servers, group chats, niche forums, places that felt like the early internet, when connection was intimate, not industrial. These spaces were proof that even within a machine optimized for consumption, the desire for genuine connection persists. Because that's what this story has always been about, not screens or servers, but psychology. The same drives that led our ancestors to gather around fires are the ones that keep us refreshing our feeds. Attention, recognition, belonging. The tools evolve, but the instincts remain. What has changed is the scale, and with it, the stakes. The mirror of social media shows us everything at once, the best and worst of humanity, the noble and the petty, the profound and the performative. It magnifies the parts of ourselves we'd rather ignore, but mirrors don't lie, they reflect. And in the reflection, we can see not just what we've become, but what we might still be capable of. We are still learning how to live with this mirror, to look without losing ourselves in the reflection, to participate without performing, to connect without competing, to share without surrendering our solitude. These are the new forms of literacy, psychological, social, emotional, that the digital age demands. Platforms respond to what we reward. When we reward spectacle, we get more spectacle. When we reward thoughtfulness, we get more thought. Culture is just the algorithm of millions of small decisions, repeated daily, invisibly. What we click becomes who we are. What we linger on becomes what we become. In the end, the story of social media isn't about apps or algorithms. It's about us, a species wired for connection, haunted by comparison, shaped by the eyes of others, yet still capable of choosing where to place our own. The oldest human instinct, to reach toward one another, collided with the newest human invention, the algorithm. We built the machine to understand ourselves, and it did, perhaps too well. But mirrors do not dictate, they reflect. They can distort, yes, magnify vanity, feed anxiety, reward cruelty. But they can also reveal what's tender and true, the parts of us that want to listen more than speak, to understand more than react. The feed will keep asking the same question: who are you when everyone is watching? But there is another question worth holding: who are you when no one is? Because the history and psychology of social media ultimately lead back to that quiet moment, to the unrecorded self, the unfiltered thought, the human being behind the performance. If we can find clarity there, if we can remember how to be before we broadcast who we are, then perhaps the mirror we built might finally reflect not distortion, but understanding. And in that reflection, we might see not the end of authenticity, but its rebirth.